This is Sean Paul Day from London Taxi Radio, and as always, I'm winging it for all you knights of the road out there. I'd like to start by saying a great big thank you to all those who have come up to me and given me feedback on these quite often incoherent rambling blogs I do. I'm humbled, I'm undeserving, but I thank you all nonetheless. I'd like to talk about something that is very close to my heart and something I take very, very seriously, and that is mental health. At the moment, there's a cross-party drive for employers to become more aware of their mental health in the workplace. Now, this is a good thing. I don't think it goes far enough, and it should have been on the curriculum about 30 years ago, but nevertheless, it addresses something today that goes some way to dismantling the stigma that still surrounds mental health. And quite a few of us, if we haven't already, will experience mental ill health at some point in our lives. Now, this is quite often episodic and is brought on usually by some trauma or some event in your life, or maybe stress levels become insurmountable and your natural coping mechanisms become exhausted, and you might need medicating for that. Now, I'm a great believer in serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They really do save lives, and not only that, but they can help someone through a period of readjustment so that they can come out the other end having navigated their way through and find themselves in a healthier state of mind. So that's all good, but whenever I hear there's a concerted effort with employees and employers, I'm reminded every time about what our regulators have done to us in our profession. Effectively, they have plunged 24,000 people and their families into a place of incertitude. Now, look, not knowing the best solution, or not knowing if you've got the job the next day, or not knowing if you've passed your exam, these are valid positions in life. There are times when we don't know the end result, but the difference is we have been forced into a place of incertitude which is now in its third year. And the real problem with long-term incertitude, this uncertainty, not knowing whether the end result will be good, and not knowing who to turn to or who to trust or what is true, absolutely induces anxiety. Now, everybody presenting for therapy will suffer from anxiety. Now, the thing is, it's okay for the 700 that hemorrhaging into the private hire industry to just next week hemorrhage out because they don't want to do it anymore. But our industry isn't a transient profession. It is something people go into for life. There are drivers that have been in this job for 20, 30 years, and now they are faced with such devastation. Their whole lives have been built around this job. Their families, where they live, the structure to their lives have been built around this trade. And TfL and the mayor have picked them up, turned them upside down and smashed them down on their heads. Now, rising anxiety levels invariably leads to stress. Stress will excrete a hormone called cortisol, and high levels of cortisol in the bloodstream certainly will exasperate stress, which will descend a person into depression and possibly clinical depression. Now, I have, more than anything else, a really, really big problem with our regulators. I have to call into question their discernment to make any decision about our industry simply on this basis. Because for them to do that to a whole community, and we are a community, is probably the most malicious, the most vindictive, the most psychopathic disregard someone can have for an individual or a collective. And I say collective because we often experience what is known as projective identification. So if someone else is depressed because of what they're going through, they might be putting on a very strong front, but you can pick up the implicit because you can relate to what they are going through. So you yourself can take on board their stress levels, experience them yourselves, and perpetuate that to the next person, and so on and so on. So you get a kind of herd contagion. Now this is a serious issue that is not being dealt with. We are being left in limbo. Now, as much as I want to attack our regulators, and believe me, I will never, ever, until the day I die, let this one go. But first and foremost is self-care, because the consequences of high levels of stress, which might descend into depression or into a depressive state, is the secondary consequences of that mental state, and that is problems with your relationships and certainly finance issues, which then become primary problems within themselves. And if any of this relates to you, if you're listening to me and you think, you know what, I'm making some kind of point, whatever it is, then I just talk to somebody. It's no big deal, just talk to somebody. If you were finding it difficult to get out to work and it hadn't used to be a problem, or if you're working too much but not very productively, or maybe you're putting bills in the drawer and just pretending they're not there, then just talk to somebody. And also, because we don't have a solution, because there isn't a conclusion there, we have to put in place provisions that we can only do that while we hold some autonomy, some control in our lives, you know. So you might be on borrowing to pay borrowing. So you might need to say, well, we can borrow till June, and come June, we'll have to cut the cloth to suit, you know. Now, by doing that today, you're kind of giving yourself a degree of control to be able to manage when the day comes that you might need to cut the cloth. If you haven't done that, then there's a good chance that what happens to you at the time might overwhelm you, and then if you're forced into a state of depression, you're not going to see the wood for the trees. You won't be able to decide what to have for breakfast the next day or not. And we cannot allow ourselves to get to that position. We seriously cannot, because everything suffers in our lives. And certainly, if we have partners or we have close friendships around us and they notice patterns of behavior that's changed in us, or we're doing things that is not normative for us, please just talk to them, or just listen to what your partner or your friend has to say, because sometimes someone who takes an observant position can see more clearly than we can see ourselves, you know. And we certainly don't want anyone to be in such a place where they think there is no way out. Because I tell you now, categorically, unquestionably, that whatever happens to this industry, and I still have a positive outlook, I still believe that as an industry there is going to be a positive future. But if the worst comes to the worst, I assure you, it is not a matter of life or death. Keep healthy, and no doubt at all, I will see you out there on the mean streets.